All things SciComm. What does the future of science look like? What's happening in science communication? Here's your host, Nikesh Gosalia.
Hi everyone, welcome to All Things SciComm. All Things SciComm is a weekly podcast brought to you by Science Talks, a media platform that aims to make science accessible to everyone. In this program, we dive into the latest from the sci-tech world. A little bit about myself. My name is Nikesh Gosalia and I'm joining you from London. I've been part of the science communication and scholarly publishing industry for more than 14 years. I've worked with researchers, academic publishers, journals, societies, and universities at some level. It is my absolute pleasure to be hosting this podcast where we will discuss the latest in science, technology, and the research world. Enough about me. Say hello to my co-host for today, Jayashree Rajagopalan.
Hi Nikesh, thanks for that. And once again, a big hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone who's tuned into today's episode of All Things SciComm. I'm Jayashree and I co-host a community forum for researchers. I too, like Nikesh, have been part of the scholarly communication industry for over a decade now. And over the years, I've had some fantastic conversations with researchers and scientists, as well as publishers and science communication professionals. Nikesh and I are currently having a series of conversations with a lot of fantastic science communication professionals, which is why I can't wait to get today's conversation started. Nikesh, could you please introduce our guest for today?
Absolutely. So let's get started with our episode.
All things SciComm. Today's innovator. Knock knock.
Today we are chatting with Dr Elodie Chabrol. Elodie is International Director of the Pint of Science Festival and a freelance science communication consultant. She holds a PhD in neuroscience and has also postdoctoral research experience. Her academic background gives her a strong first-hand understanding of how researchers can communicate science better. Her specialities are training scientists to communicate with the public and on social media and organizing science events.
Yeah, that's right. And before we proceed, just a little bit about Pint of Science. For those of you who haven't heard of it yet, Pint of Science is a global festival where researchers talk about science or communicate their science in a really engaging fashion to the non-scientific community. Now, the highlight of Pint of Science, which makes it one of my favorites, the highlight of Pint of Science is the informal setting. So your Pint of Science event takes place at a local pub or bar near you. Now, this informal setting makes it really easy. It sort of breaks down all barriers. It makes it really easy for a researcher to communicate with a non-scientific community. And it also sort of helps build an interest in the public about science. And it also helps them more curious about science and scientific concepts. And the fact that a scientist is easily accessible to them in an informal setting makes it even more interesting and engaging. So let's get started then. Welcome, Elodie. I'm really happy to have you here. I'm very excited because this is the first time we're having this face-to-face conversation. I think we've known each other for several years now, and we've had a lot of conversations about an interview or quote or a panel discussion. And I'm really happy to finally have this face-to-face conversation with you today.
And thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here today. And thank you for this great introduction, actually. You exactly nailed what Pint of Science is and what my job is actually as well, which is sometimes a bit difficult for people. So I'm really happy to be here. I can't wait to chat with you guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Elodie. Before we get started, is there an interesting story behind, how you got into science communication? Was there like a eureka moment of some sort? Or, was it just a natural kind of transition into science communication? And what are you so passionate about?
So I think the first thing is that I've always wanted to be a teacher. When I was very young, I was riding horses and I wanted to be a riding, teacher. And then I broke my knees and I was like, okay, I need to do something else than riding because it was really bad. So I started interesting myself in science and then I thought I will be a science teacher. And then I discovered research and I was saying, okay, I will be a researcher, but also a lecturer. And to be honest, I discovered science communication quite late by doing Pint of Science during my postdoc. It was almost 10 years ago, and 10 years ago, science communication wasn't as big as it is now. So we didn't have as many opportunities. So I really discovered it while doing Pint of Science. And my eureka moment was actually, this is exactly my place now. I feel exactly where I should be. And now the best is that I'm teaching PhD students how to do science communication. And every time I do that, I feel like, universe just put me at my exact perfect spot I was supposed to end, but I didn't know. And for the anecdote, actually, we are almost at Valentine's Day, and Pint of Science, I received the email saying that they were looking for volunteers on Valentine's Day. So, it's quite funny. I always say my love for science communication started with an email on Valentine's Day, actually.
Wow.
Wow, that's fascinating. I know. Yeah, sorry, Jayashree, you wanted to...
No, I'm just saying, wow. I'm sorry. It's such a sweet story.
Thank you for sharing, Elodie. So the first point of discussion is about the directionality of science communication. Typically, science communication efforts by societies and publishers tend to be one way. I mean, things are changing, but more or less, tend to be one way. For example, the societies would put out a video or an infographic and try to get views, like some sort of social engagement. In that sense, Pint of Science is different because it's all about two-way communication. Both scientists and the public talk and listen to each other. So I have a few questions there. Do you think societies could also organize events like the Pint of Science? Has Pint of Science had any societies or publishers participate in these events as well? And finally, what tips would you give societies and publishers about, organizing similar kind of events?
So for the first question, definitely, I think anyone can organize events like this. We didn't create being in a bar. What we created was really having it as a festival, like a music festival where you have multiple scenes at the same time and you have to pick. But science has been discussed in bars and cafes actually since forever. The first cafe in Paris is called the Procop, and you had philosophers there discussing science, drinking coffee there. So it's very not new. I think it's an old way of doing science communication. It's just, there's two things. At first, it's an old way of doing science communication. The very descending way where scientists just explain their research to the public and then the public takes it as for granted and that's it. And there is no dialogue or whatever. And it's also, depending on what you have and what you do, you can have a two-way conversation, and sometimes you can have only a one-way, and it's fine. So you have to adapt with that. But definitely opening to a more two ways or a dialogue could be great. Events like that are good for that. Anything that has interaction, so obviously events are great for that, and especially in-person events where you can sit down and discuss with people. And I think we have a very big cliche as well. When I was a scientist and I was saying to people I'm a scientist, the first reaction I would get 50% of the time would be like, oh, okay, but you must be too smart, or I won't try to understand what you were working on because it must be so complicated. They are on a kind of pedestal, and scientists are so unreachable that we need to break that, I think. So anything that helps that. It could be even a one-way thing, but opening to the human. I think I work a lot on showing the human side of scientists, not just the science. And I think Pint of Science does it well, because every time during the events, we see people asking, what kind of studies did you do to arrive there? Did you always know you wanted to be a scientist? Why do you work on that subject? Kind of questions are a bit more personal than actually science. But I think societies could definitely organize that kind of events. You just have to have that in mind, sharing stuff and not just the science and the data. It's more than that. It's having scientists and the public meet and discussing. And we had publishers actually participate in Pint of Science. We had Hindawi for a bit, and it was great because we had blog posts. Some researchers wrote some blog posts about their research. And I think definitely it can be done. It's just a way of thinking, what kind of events we want to do, what kind of communication we want to do. So I think that's the thing. They could organize their own. They could also sponsor, some already organized thing, because sometimes it's overwhelming to start organizing events where you're not used to do that. And also, if you really want to reach the public, it's not something you might do the first shot. So that's an advice I would give for, publishers, society, anyone that organizes events that doesn't get the right target the first time, feels a bit sad, or like they don't want to continue. It's a work that comes with time. Pint of Science, the first one, it was more scientists than it was public, obviously. In France, we had 5% of non-scientists the first year. And now we're 50-50. And I don't think we will reach more than 50% of the public, because scientists are interested in science. And when you ask them, usually scientists coming to Pint of Science are in another domain, like neuroscientists going to astrophysics, which for me is kind of public, like when I go to an astrophysics event, I really don't have anything, like I don't know what they're talking about. So it's really new for me. So that's the thing I would give societies and publisher. Don't give up if the first time is not right, because you need time for people to discuss, to know that exists. And so it's good to do it again and to see an evolution. If you see an evolution in your public, it's great. And when you organize events, don't just think about the science. Think about the humans behind the science and what you want to share about them and how the public could ask questions or know more about them. It could be, for example, I started a podcast in French that is called Sous la blouse, which means under the lab coat. And the idea is we talk about science 5 minutes at the start, really just for them to explain their research. And then we talk about them for 30 minutes. So they tell me how they ended up doing science, why this subject, what do they do outside of science, what is their passion, what do they like, what is their favorite movie, that kind of things. And people, when they listen to it, especially young people, they feel like, okay, I have a role model. This person didn't know she wanted to do science until maybe like first year of university. We always have that cliche of scientists being like super geniuses that know at 10 that they will do neuroscience because they've always been reading, crazy books. But the reality most of the time is much different. People discover science later. And I think it's good for young people and for everyone to get to know them as well. So those would be my advice. I would say, think about what you want to share with the public, what you want to get out of your events, and don't give up if it doesn't work the first time. Ask for feedback. Be sure you know why it didn't work, and if it just didn't work, if you didn't reach enough public, that's just normal. So start again.
Thank you so much, Elodie. That was really insightful. Just to build on it, have you seen a change in the demographics while you've been running Pint of Science in terms of, scientific versus non-scientific audiences being involved in it? And could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So we've seen more non-scientists for sure. But so we had a plateau 50-50, and I think we're going to stay that way because we cannot really not let scientists go into Pint of Science. And also, if you're a scientist, you're often interested in science. But a few years ago, I realized, because I'm a neuroscientist, and all my neuroscientist friends, they go to Pint of Science, but they go to astrophysics events or, sometimes even whatever archaeology, whatever kind of event that is not neuroscience. And I realized that's why I say ask for feedback, that in the feedback, when we were asking people who they were, we were a bit too black and white. Are you scientists? Yes. Okay. So we have 50% of scientists. And then I realized, okay, I'm going to ask them, did you go to an event that is in your domain or not? And then 70% of the people were going to another domain. So they were basically public for that. So that's why it's important sometimes to, readapt even the feedback you're asking or how you create your event, because sometimes you're disappointed. I could be disappointed by my plateau, but I'm super happy because actually now I realize that it's much more than 50% of people that are lay public, going to the Pint of Science. Because if you're a neuroscientist, go to an astrophysics event, definitely you're like the general public, you don't know much about astrophysics. And actually astrophysics, for the anecdotes, is the place where you have the general public that is going to know so much. It's a passionate, kind of area where people love it. And sometimes they know more than the scientists, that come because they know on some domain, and some super passionate people are going to ask questions. And the scientist is going to be like, I'm sorry, I don't know how to answer to that. So it's surprising, but that's why it's about, when you build your feedback, it's really always changing. You have to adapt to the thing. And sometimes discussing with other people as well. I think it's very important when you organize event to discuss, to network with people doing it as well. Because if you just do it yourself in your little bubble, you might forget things, or you might not realize some things are important. And when you discuss with people, I think probably it's going to an event where I was with my friends neuroscientists, where I realized, okay, I'm not asking people that are scientists what their background is, so I should do that. And discussing with other people as well is so mind-blowing, because you realize how other people are doing. You're like, what? I should do that as well.
Wow, but just to kind of cite those numbers again, Elodie, 50% scientific and 50% non-scientific, or even 70% from a particular domain is really impressive. And so congratulations to you and the Pint of Science team for even achieving
Thank
that.
you.
And just that kind of prompted another question in my mind. I'm just curious to know your view. Do you think it's more about the challenge is more about the attitude towards science, or a shift in mindset that non-scientific audiences need to develop? Or is it that science communication itself has to kind of repurpose itself to make it simpler for people to understand? I'm just trying to understand what the challenge is.
So I think the challenge is really about getting people where they are. So if you want to get already interested people, you don't have to do much. They see a science event, they are going to go. If you want to interest people that are not necessarily interested in science, you need to be more subtle. And you need to basically make science, like, force a meeting with science. So, for example, Pint of Science is amazing, but people are coming to us. You have lots of initiatives where it's just in their everyday life, people are gonna meet scientists, like Science Soapbox, where it's in lots of places in Europe where women scientists are standing on soapboxes and talking about their research in the city. So it's super scary for the researchers because they're always scared, that no one's gonna stop and ask them questions. They always get lots of people, but it's in their lives. We started an astrophysics thing as well that is called On the Moon Again, where people take their telescopes, go in the streets, and they show the moon to passers-by. And to have done that, it was so emotional because people didn't expect it, and they walked by, and then you offer them to watch the moon through a telescope, which some of them didn't do, and they leave that. You see the emotions on their faces. It's amazing. I love that. So I think to get more public, it's lots of different things, it's not necessarily be more simple. It's more adapt to their culture or to their likes or to their life, and for them to see an interest or for them to know you exist, because we all have different circles, we are all in our bubbles. And if you don't go in people's bubble, sometimes you're never going to reach them. So that's why you see lots and lots of science communication activities now that are, that sound super crazy, but they are actually getting people where they are, on the tube, on the streets, on whatever, in their everyday lives. Just disrupt them, because I think it's an effort we have to do, and it's pretty cool to do that. And so it's not just being simple. It's also thinking, who do I want to reach? Why are they unreachable for me right now? How could I be more accessible for them? Or how could they know about me? So yeah, it's just...
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Elodie. That was so nicely put by you. It's not just about, keeping it simple. I've heard about safe chemical experiments being done, London tube stations. I think we have to just take science into the normal walk of life and make it easily accessible to people. And it's not just about simplifying the message.
Exactly, because, simplifying, at one point you become oversimplified, and it doesn't mean people are going to come to you, even if you're simple. You just need to think really like, who do I want to reach? How can I reach them? And how can I reach them is, what is their daily activities, their culture, the thing they like? Okay, I'm going to try to go that way and maybe combine the two. There is a thing, I'm always talking about it. It's science Gaelic. It's in Scotland, and it's melting science and Gaelic together. And I think that's amazing. And that's an idea of how you can reach people with science through traditional meetings and dance and everything.
Very fascinating. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Elodie. So going back to the societies, quite a few research societies are struggling with science communication, especially in terms of actually engaging with the public. What would you say to a society? What tips would you give a society that is trying to get people interested in its research? And that too, especially on social media channels.
So the first thing is to think who you want to reach, because there is one thing that we always think is that we talk about the general public, but the general public doesn't exist. It's not this massive amount of people, and you have to think it's related to what I was saying before. Who do I want to reach? Because when you say the public, it's going to be too wide. It's going to be your target is so big that you're not going to reach anyone, or you might reach some people, but you will not hit the sweet spot you want to hit. So you have to decide, do you want to reach younger audience, like, before university? Do you want to reach students audience? Do you want to reach older audience? So I think that's the first question they need to think about and they need to resolve, because you're not going to communicate the same way to 30 years old and to 50 years old. And I think the biggest mistake people do is that they make communication that is like, blank, like it doesn't really feel like it's made for me. Like you read it, you're like, okay, yeah, it just feels too flat for anyone to actually react to that. So what you want to do is that people feel connected to what you're sharing. So I think the first tip would be really to, within the general public, that is this massive thing, who do I want to reach? Where is my audience? And why do I want to reach them? Do I want to reach them to talk about, if it's a university, do I want to actually have more students coming? So it's more like a young kind of audience. So maybe I need to go a bit more with the codes. Maybe I need to even do a TikTok kind of thing, because it's what they're watching right now. And you have lots of science communicator, amazing on TikTok. So, that's the kind of thing. And I think often it's the step that people don't do or don't do right. And then their communication doesn't work. And I think 90% of good communication is thinking, who do I want to reach? How do I do that? And then once you start creating contents that are actually made for them, then you will see the change. And don't hesitate as well to try things. As I said, it doesn't always work the same the first session on social media. Some stuff are going viral, some stuff are not. And sometimes you don't really know why. It's just because one got viral because you posted a tardigrade picture on a Monday morning and everyone's going to like it. And so try again. On social media, it's good to try to see what works, to see also to have models, of people that are doing communication to the targets you want to, that are going well as well, to see how they do, watch what they are doing, how they are doing, and don't do the exact same thing, obviously, but inspire yourself from others. Like I said before, if you do it in your own corner, usually you don't get inspiration. You're going to end up doing the same thing. And yeah, don't hesitate to try things out, especially digitally. You could try things. If it doesn't work, it's okay. Try some other things and see how it goes, how it works. And when something picks up, then that's perfect.
Thank you, Elodie. Societies are increasingly looking at international audiences. So can we talk a little bit about bilingual and multilingual science communication? You are a successful science communicator in 2 languages, English and French. Do you find that not just content, but your strategy and approach differ between languages? And how effective is just translating a piece from one language to another?
That's a question actually we had a lot for Pint of Science, because we have some countries that have a lot of English-speaking people. And, they wonder, should we do all Pint of Science in English or should we do local languages? So first thing is that always think it's international, because scientists are very international. But what language your target is speaking? Because sometimes going English, it's getting rid of all the public that you would want to reach that don't actually speak English. For example, in France, if you want to do science communication, it's better to do it in French. But then at the same time, I realized during Pint of Science that if in big cities we didn't have English events, we were actually excluding some Erasmus students from coming, So sometimes it's the other way around. You have local and then you realize English is more inclusive. So I think the first question is, okay, who is my target? Always the same question. That's always the first question. What language do they speak? Would it be interesting for them to have it in English? Depending on the countries or even the places, sometimes English is interesting. Sometimes it's not, because it's going to go the other way around. People might see it in English and feel, this is not for me. This content is not for me. So be careful with that. Some institutions as well, they have one Twitter account in French, one Twitter account in English, for example. So it's something they could see, and they don't have the same strategy, because international, it's going to be more for scientists and maybe students, and French is going to be more for general public or not necessarily scientists and students. So it's not always a question of just translating. You could be just translating if the piece goes for both of them, but you have to think about who's speaking that language And is it different targets? And then if it is, then the strategy is going to be different, and it's going to be different content as well.
Thank you, Elodie. I mean, that was those were very useful tips. Just like me, I think the listeners are going to really benefit from that. Jayashree, over to you.
Thank you, Nikesh. Elodie, wow, I'm just blown away. It's such amazing insights. I don't know if you guys noticed, I'm sure you were talking to each other, but I was busy taking notes. So I'm going to look at some of these notes before I move on to some of the questions that I had for you.
That's all the time we have today. Catch more of this episode in the next part with your host, Nikesh Gosalia. See you soon.